This is not to make you nervous, but it's to show you real life, what can happen here, and we want you all to be prepared for that. So what's going to happen here really quickly is so that we can put some of our tools away. Some people are like, well, if I'm sitting in my office or I'm sitting in a building, I really have no idea what to expect. I have no idea what the gunshots sound like. What's going to happen when people scream? Where's my phone? What am I going to do? And all these things start going through your head, and it hasn't even happened yet. Gunshots, right? Gunshots. Okay? These are what gunshots sound like. These aren't like firecrackers. These are real gunshots. So tonight we used an M4 with a blank adapter, and we used blanks. So it'll get a little more intense. So you say to yourself, oh my goodness, what do I do? I need to run and get a first aid kit. So if you work at SEAL, where's your first aid kit in your building? Office. Oh, good, because we want to protect the office, right? We don't care about the workers that are someplace else. So what about up at Daly or Peckham? Where's your first aid kit?
Depends on what building you're in. Office is right in the entryway.
Okay.
In the plant itself, we're over to the receiving office.
Perfect.
We've got numbers, garages, and everything else. We've got.
Perfect. So you have those. So somebody runs and says, oh my goodness, my friend's been shot. And you go and you grab the Johnson & Johnson first aid kit. Right? Bengay. That's perfect. I have a stab wound or a gunshot wound, and I need to put some Bengay on because that's going to make it feel better, right? Not happening. Oh, look! A first aid book. So wait, hang on. Hang on! You're going to get out your book and you're going to take a look. And look, we have all the emergency numbers we can put on the back. Doctor, hospital, pharmacy. That's important. Call in the pharmacy because who knows? We might not even be able to get any medication unless things get going. What else we got? Oh, we have, Jill, look. We have 2x2s. 2x2s. Okay? That's pretty fantastic. Oh my goodness, look at this. We have all one size, flexible fabric Band-Aids, one size. Okay? That's fantastic. Oh my goodness, we have some steri strips. Ooh, we do have a package of gloves. We will need those. We got some tweezers, whatever. We have Neosporin. Neosporin, that's fantastic. Ooh, look at that tape we have. That's pretty fantastic, right? So we have that. But what's most important, right here. Hey! I'm from Bennington Rescue and I'm going to manage your pain. I have some Motrin. Right? Really? This is junk. Right? So for those of you that have these types of first aid kits, we're going to teach you different. We're going to teach you different tonight. Right? So we're going to teach you about things that you can put, and Dee's like, hey, those Band-Aids were expensive. Let me do those so no one trips on those, right?
Starting from zero. A lot of things happen in our lives. They're complicated, stressful, preoccupying, and our minds are constantly going. We are in a world today, we were inundated with messaging and texting and phone calls and social media, and our minds are always going. They never really rest, even when we're going to work or we're leaving work. So this is about situational awareness, and this is what we teach, is that when you're coming or going from somewhere, specifically work, you need to pay attention to your surroundings. Know what is out of place, doesn't look right, doesn't smell right, having your cell phone while you're walking up to the office and doing this, and not paying attention to what's going on with the person who's standing next to the entrance that you've never seen before. It just doesn't ring right. The back of your hair starts sticking up. That's the time you need to be paying attention the most, especially when you're leaving work. And I know a lot of people here about because of work and workplace violence and active shooter, be a good witness. So if you're coming or going, pay attention. Put your cell phone on. look around. Look around at cars, people sitting in cars that just doesn't right. You've never seen the car before in your parking lot. All the windows are up, and it's really, really hot. The car's not running. The person's outside the car, standing by a tree in the corner of the building, and it's a 90-degree day, and they're wearing an outfit that just doesn't fit that weather, or vice versa. Those things you need to pay attention to. Package out of place. It doesn't belong there. It probably shouldn't be there. And that's where you need to stop. And call us. If you see someone that fits, that just doesn't seem right to you, or you see something that doesn't look right, you need to call us. At no point will you ever get one of our dispatchers telling you, well, we're too busy for that. We will get there. Be diligent. It's very, very important to know your surroundings. Know your escape routes. So when you're inside a building and you're in your office building, our building's 3 floors. If it's secure, nobody can get in there. But if you're in this building, know your escape routes. Know your hiding places. Know where your threats are. If you're sitting in your office up at Daly's, where are you going to go if you hear someone down the hallway and you hear the gunshots like you heard just earlier? Where are you going to go? Do you know where you're going to go? You're going to stay there? You're going to run? You're going to hide? You're going to fight? So the important thing is, first of all, know your escape routes. If you cannot get out your escape route, then you need to prepare to hide. You need to make yourself shut everything, shut lights down. I can tell you, most active shooters are over within minutes. Anywhere, the national average for an active shooter is somewhere between 5 and 7 minutes, and they're done and over. Whether it's police contact or the shooter takes his or her own life. Once a shooter decides that they want to do what they're doing, and once they reach the first gunshot, they know. They've done the research. They know how much time they're going to have to do what they intended to do. 5 to 7 minutes. It's not real long time, but when you're sitting in that room listening to that gunshot, I guarantee you 5 to 7 minutes is an extremely long time. So they want to create as much damage as possible in a short period of time. So they are going to look for the obvious targets. Whether the person, if they have an intended target, or they just want to do something to that establishment, to that workplace, because they've got let go and they feel like they've been wrong. They're going to move as fast as they can. So it's very, very important for you to be quiet, lock your doors, barricade your doors, and be ready if that person is able to get into that room. What does that mean? Prepare to fight, right? It's a tough thing to do. You're in the room and you've got a chair, you've got a desk lamp, you may have a small monitor, and some other things, and the person's going to come through with a gun. What are you going to do? You've got to prepare yourself to fight. So when you sit in your office and you're doing your normal day-to-day work, look around. Look around. What would you use to protect yourself? The tower from your computer? That's pretty heavy. A chair? You can put the person in the corner. There's all kinds of things you can use. I'm sure I've got multiple scissors in my cup with all my pens and stuff like that. There's all kinds of things that you can use to protect yourself. You just need to know what those things are and identify them. Simple as that. That's the world we live in. You never want to look at your workplace as, oh man, what am I going to use if someone comes in here and shoots up the place? But that's what we live in. That's where we are today. So when you're in there and you hear that gunshot, and we call that stimulus indicators. That's what we look for. All our officers are trained. We are very, very fortunate to have the police chief that we have, who's very progressive on training. Sergeant Stepp and I have been to some of the best training in this country. We've been down to Washington, D.C., we've been to North Carolina, and we stay on top of the most recent trends in active threat, which we now call the active threat, not so much active shooter. Single officer response, as you remember, and I'm going to keep this short, Columbine was the change of everything, right? Before we used to go, we'd surround, set up a perimeter, we'd call out SWAT, SWAT would come in, SWAT would take care of it, right? We don't do that anymore. Then it was, as we progressed from Columbine, it was, all right, patrol officers they're going to get together, and it's going to be a four-officer team. We're going to breach, and we're going to go in and take care of the threat and then address victims. We no longer train like that. We train single officer response. Officer goes and deals with a threat. If 4 patrol cars are not pulling in, when that first one pulls in, the officer's going right to the threat and dealing with that. The officer's going to look for stimulus. Indicators. Stimulus is a gunshot. People screaming. Indicators are stuff like bullet casings, blood trails. So that's the way we train today. If you are secured in place, we will come find you. Trust me, we will find you. It may take time. Even if your door's locked, we'll get in. So when you call in and you get the dispatcher, Christine's going to tell you a little bit what to expect.
So the first thing that we're going to ask you for is your address. Know your address where you work. There's a bunch of different locations for SEAL, for elementary schools, the hospital, there's the CLR, there's the hospital. Know the address that you're at. That's the first thing we're going to ask you. The second thing that we're going to ask you is where you are in that facility. Bennington Health and Rehab, I'm at 2 Blackberry Lane. Okay, where are you in the facility? First floor, second floor, third floor. You've got to give us some indication of where you are in your facility. Then we're going to ask you, what have you seen? Have you seen a male? Have you seen a female? Have you seen a person with a gun? Do you hear gunshots? Have you seen somebody with a knife? What can you tell us? If you can't give us a clothing description, at least give us what you hear. You may be under your desk and say you heard gunshots out in the hallway and you just shut your door. That's good enough for us. You're on the 3rd floor at Bennington Health and Rehab and all you heard was gunshots. If that's all you can give us, that's what we'll take. Doesn't matter. But the more you can give us, we're not asking you to go out into the hallway and look for somebody to see what you see. But if you hear anything, that's what we're going to take. We're going to stay on the line with you until you can give us any more information or we can get the police there.
They are going to ask you for your name, address, and your birth date, and hopefully your phone number comes up on the screen. If not, we're going to ask you for that. And people get frustrated with that. Just send the damn cops. Okay, but we need to know what's going on. We need to know if there are weapons involved or things like that. So be a witness. Gather information so that you can share that with us when we arrive there. I also want to share with you, the lieutenant brought it up and said, hey, we integrated our dispatchers last year with training.
Diligent employees who know that something was out of place. I can tell you that happened, and I was on one of those calls, and it was very, very tense. And that person was ready to do exactly what they wanted to do as soon as the noon hour came because they could see right into the lunchroom with their scope.
I have a bunch of stuff up here. This is all hands-on. This is come up and play. So I'm just going to kind of go over the equipment that we use to train. So this is called Stop the Bleed. Okay, so I've got gloves up here for those that want to participate. I also have gowns if you guys want to participate. It can get a little bloody. So the first thing we have is what we call wound cubes. Okay, so just ballistics gel. It's been shot and sliced several times. There's different bullet holes in here, and there's a big laceration. We fill it full of blood so you guys can pack the wound. So just like Chief Doucette said, we pack wounds. All right, no matter how big or small, We use anything that we can find, really. So if you're in your office and you have paper towels or whatever that you can use that's not greasy or somewhat dirty, we can use to pack a wound. T-shirts, things like that, okay? So, the way we pack a wound is similar to what he showed you, right? So I'm going to use this big bullet hole here. His Z-fold is wonderful to have, not always going to be on hand, right? So we can use anything. The way to do it is to wrap it around your finger. So this is a bullet hole. We're going to be doing different maneuvers if it's a larger laceration or bigger wound. So you're going to wrap it around your finger and you're going to shove your finger as far in as you can. It is going to be painful for them and it's going to be absolutely gross for you, but it is essential, okay? So once your finger is in there, your finger stays in there, right? Because what are we doing to that wound now? We're plugging it. We're holding pressure on the bleeding, okay? So now we're going to wrap the gauze with our other finger and we're going to shove our other finger in there, okay? So this needs to go really, really fast, okay? So we are going to pack this wound until we cannot pack it anymore. This one's a pretty big one. Once that wound is full, we are going to pile the rest of our gauze on top and hold direct pressure. Okay, those are for wounds that are in your core, or what we call our junctional wounds, so up in your shoulders and in your groin. Those are what we're going to pack, okay? We also have a laceration. We also have a big thigh here, too. Let me ask the crowd, what would be a good indication that we cannot stop bleeding with direct pressure? What are some signs that you might see right off the bat that you know that you're not going to be able to control bleeding with direct pressure?
Bones.
What is it?
Swelling or squirting.
Okay, spurting. What else? Color, bright red, right? So if our clothing is soaked with blood, we know that's a pretty significant amount of blood. Squirting blood, people that are semi-responsive or unconscious, they've lost a lot of blood, okay, unless they don't like the sight of their own blood, and many people have that. And then pooling on the ground. So if you're holding direct pressure and it's still pooling underneath them, we know that we need to move on to a tourniquet, okay? So we've packed the wound, that's not working. We've held direct pressure, that's not working. So I'm going to pass this out. We're going to pass around these tourniquets, and I'm going to kind of explain how these work. These are about $30 on Amazon. Great to have in your car, in your glove box, whatever. Jill's passing around the tourniquets. These are called a CAT tourniquet, okay? Combat application tourniquet. Military uses these all day, every day. So there is several parts to a tourniquet, okay? So we have the Velcro portion, we have an outer sheath, and an inner sheath. Okay, so the inner portion is webbing. The outer portion is just your Velcro, okay? So if you have a wound on your arms or legs, this is when you're going to use a tourniquet, okay? You can't obviously use a tourniquet around the neck, that's probably not, unless you don't like your coworker. But we're going to use this on our arms or legs, okay? So these come pre-packaged, already folded over like this. We want to leave it through the loop if it's going on an arm, okay? So this is also designed to be able to do it on yourself, right? So we all talked about earlier, self-aid and then buddy aid. Because if you're not taking care of yourself first, then you can't help your friend, because then you're going to be unconscious, okay? So we slide this on. There are some other pieces to this tourniquet. You have this white piece. You'll see it says time on there, okay? We are going to un-Velcro this piece, and you guys can all practice this up here. And we have an arm that bleeds, okay? It's pretty cool. All right, so we're going to pull this off, and we're going to re-secure it on the other side of the plastic. This big stick, okay, it's called a windlass. This is connected to webbing inside of the tourniquet. That is what makes it tight, okay? Not you just Velcroing it down, okay? So I'm going to use it on my arm. Right, so this, can be used for anything. We use it for people that put their hands through plate glass windows, washing dishes, and they get their radial artery. It's for anything with profuse bleeding. Okay, so we want to secure it as best as we can. The plastic piece goes on a flat part of your arm. Okay, so the Velcro is secured. Now we need to make it tight. So we are going to spin this windlass until we cannot spin it anymore. I will tell you that tourniquets are painful for people. Okay, I've tied plenty of tourniquets in my career and they cry bloody murder because it is painful. If anyone's ever woken up with a arm that's asleep and then it starts to wake up, that's painful. That's exactly what a tourniquet feels like. Okay, so once it's gone tight enough, okay, we want to make sure that wherever the wound is, that the bleeding has stopped or it's slowed down. Okay? Once we've gotten to that point, or you can't go any further, this windlass is going to tuck underneath that plastic. Okay? Once it's secured, we're going to pull this white piece over top of the windlass, and that is what secures it. You can also pull this down and secure it. Okay? Now it's not going anywhere. This stays on. This does not come off. Okay? The paramedics in the field are not going to remove this. The only people that are going to remove this are the surgeons and the doctors in the hospital. Okay? So you'll start to notice my hand will start turning purple here in a minute because I cannot feel my hand. There is a thing on here that says time. This is very important to write on here, or I always write this on someone's forehead because this is white and we're dealing with blood and wet stuff and everything else, and that is just going to get washed off. Okay? So if you can write the time somewhere of what time you tie that tourniquet, that gives the surgeon a good indication of how long that tourniquet can stay on for. Okay? So what's the going time now? 4 hours, 5 hours for a tourniquet?
It's max, and it's going to depend on the wound.
Right. Okay? So this stays on. Okay? In these kits, these drop kits, there's a tourniquet in there, yes? So you use that for yourself first. What are some other things, if we don't have these fancy tourniquets, that we can use to tie tourniquets? Bandana, belt. Shoelaces are okay. That would be a last-ditch effort for me because they're so narrow. Okay, so notice the tourniquet's just about an inch thick, right? So we want something that's a little bit wider that can stop blood. Even if you rip someone's shirt, your shirt, a belt, and then hold it tight, all right? If it's a shirt, you can get a stick or a pen or something like that, tuck it underneath and twist it around, or you're just holding on to that belt, okay?
Why do we have to stop the blood? Can't we just wait till they're taken to the hospital? I mean, how much blood can they really bleed?
How long do you think it takes for someone to bleed out from a large arterial laceration?
Less than 10 minutes.
Probably less than a minute. Okay. If you get your femoral artery or arteries up in your arms, we're looking at less than a minute. Okay. That they're unconscious, and now we've lost too much blood. That even if you tie the tourniquet or you pack that wound, we're probably too far gone at that point. Okay. So if you can get it right away, you're going to save a life.
What happens when you get to the ER and who's going to be there and all the crazy stuff going on?
He's never heard me talk, so 2 minutes is not a lot of time. But so in the emergency department, the response to trauma varies depending on the injury and the wound. We use a system called Triage. It's a French word to sort. In the event of an active shooter, we could have a couple different things. We could have a shooter that's gone to a facility with the intent to harm a large number of people. Therefore, we could get an influx of patients, which is going to require that we triage and treat the most critically ill first. We could also have a local sort of active shooter where someone went in for a target and we only have the one victim that might be you. Let's hope it's not. So when you arrive to the emergency department with a gunshot wound, let's say, we can't determine the extent of the injury based upon the wound. So you may have a very local, isolated wound to your lower abdomen, but the injury internally can be so significant depending on the weapon. I'm not a specialist in weapons, I'll leave that to these guys. However, the extent of the injury can be quite severe. And so you are going to be have an influx of a team that responds. It's going to include physicians, specifically trained emergency room physicians, specifically trained emergency room nurses, staff from the imaging department. We may need CAT scans, we may need x-rays, surgeons, anesthesiologists in case you need to be rushed to the OR to be stabilized. The other thing is that law enforcement comes into the department and they're there for various reasons. One is they need to try to get as much information from you as they can while we're rendering care, but they also are there to make sure that it's safe there, because if they've not isolated the shooter, we don't know if they're coming to the hospital to finish what they've started. So one of the things that's important to know is that the hospital works very collaboratively with the police department. We do this on, I wouldn't say daily, but a nearly daily basis, not gunshots, but working collaboratively with them over a patient, where we can provide the care that we need to provide while they can get the information that they need to protect the community. So in the event of a trauma in the emergency department, there's a lot that goes on. There's a lot of people in the room. However, we practice, we train, much like Chief Doucette said that they practice and they train, we do the same thing. And it's not every day that we deal with gunshot wounds in this community, thankfully, but it does happen. And so we have to be ready, because you never know what's going to come through the door. And so it's quite busy and active, but everyone has a role. Everyone knows their role. They perform their role. Our community hospital will stabilize trauma patients. Depending on the extent of the injury, they're often either aeromedically transported or ground transported out to tertiary care centers with trauma teams. But because we don't have a trauma unit, we are the trauma unit at the emergency room. And so we function very similar to large-scale hospitals.
Things that we realize that we just want to go over with you. Lieutenant Brandy talked about run, hide, fight, and making sure that you get as far away from the situation as possible, especially if it's an active shooter. And we want to emphasize that to you. That, you know, we don't want to be heroes, right? Lay people don't want to be heroes. You have to rely on the police and the equipment that we have to actually run in and neutralize the issue or the problem. You guys don't need to do that. We do appreciate people that are trained in first aid to stick around and after the threat has been neutralized to give us a hand, because it is chaotic. Okay? One of the things that we didn't touch on that I love the most, right, is everybody here has had fire extinguisher training, and we talked about pull, aim, squeeze, sweep. Pass. Pull, aim, squeeze, sweep. And these fire extinguishers, these 5-pound fire extinguishers, are absolutely incredible. If you're in a room and put your hands up in front of your face, because I don't want to pay workers' comp. So if you're hiding in a room and you hear someone coming and it's a bad person, you can very easily take this 5-pound extinguisher and slam them with this. Okay, if you're in fear for your life. However, if you are a little bit older or a little bit smaller in stature, you know, pull, aim, squeeze, sweep. Okay, because what ends up happening is the dry chemical in this will cause you respiratory problems, okay? If you can't breathe, you can't fight, all right? Fire extinguishers are an amazing tool in the event of an active threat. So that's something to think about. Somebody else brought up the fact of, hey, you know, what if the police have us locked down for long periods of time? And although I do appreciate the medical center providing us with these pretzels and peanut butter, and boy, these chocolate chunk cookies are amazing. I didn't have one, but I want one. I wanted to open up the peanut butter thing and put it on here, but anyway, that's fine. You can buy all of the stuff that we have here at one of those stores. Yes, Z-Medica makes combat gauze, but also known as Quick Clot, and I can tell you, right on the shelf, right Lisa, because you don't be out there anymore, but Walmart sells the civilian version. It's the same thing! And I'm serious, they show a little dude on a lawnmower or whatever, if you get hurt, or if you're hiking and you get hurt. Most of us hike in pairs, but if you get hurt and you fall and you get a huge laceration on your leg or whatever, you need something to stop the bleeding. Right? Because your buddy's not going to put you on his or her back and get you out of there. You're going to have to bandage it up and get out. So everything that we've showed you, the only thing you can't buy is you're going to have to call over to Port-a-Brace and talk to someone in sales if you want a fancy bag. Or how we did it when we first started out, Lieutenant Grandy, we started out, we brought this with us. This isn't original. This should be in our little display case. So this is just a Ziploc bag with Coban, a triangular bandage. We did have 1-inch tape at the time, and this is how we started when all of these shootings started happening nationwide. I mean, yes, we've had them, but they seem to be more and more. This is how we started. This is old. But we brought it just to show you it can be done. Because if I'm going to go around, you're going to catch for me? We're going to go around and we're going to drop these bags, right? There you go. You have a bag. It's not as fancy as this, and it's not red, but if you can't afford to spend a lot of money, you're in a church organization or whatever it is that you're involved in, you can use these Ziploc bags. Someone has to be responsible to check them periodically. Right? And you say to yourself, well, Chief, how many of these bags do I need? How many of these bags should I keep in my church, or how many should I keep in the office? Listen, if an active shooter comes in or an active threat comes in and you end up having someone with multiple gunshot wounds, or you have multiple people hurt, you can't just have 1 or 2 bags. Spend the money. It's not a lot of money to be prepared. We would much rather be prepared. Yes, when the rescue squad gets there, they've got it. Yes, when the police department gets there, we've got it. But it might be a while before we can get to you. You need to have the stuff to be prepared.
You know, in healthcare about 5 years ago, we had to shift our thinking. The emergency management at the time was, how do you prepare for multiple victims from an accident? How do you prepare when the elevator goes down? Every now and then we throw in a bomb threat. How do you prepare for that? That's not the world we live in anymore, and you have to be prepared. So even the medical center, we have a full active shooter plan. We exercise it, we train, we practice, we teach our staff what they can do. You're never fully prepared to respond to something like this, but when your teams and your co-workers know how they should, you're more prepared and less lives get lost. So that's something we haven't necessarily touched on. But go back to your business and find out what is our plan and when are we going to practice it.
And Bennington Rescue also does provide stop the bleed training and first aid and CPR training to businesses. All you have to do is call Bennington Rescue and we come out to you and train your staff.
And the fact that
small or big.
And the fact that you're here tonight with us, you're starting your training. You've already started that progressive training and learning.
And to close this, for all of you that want to get home, okay, I will also share with you that if you go to the Vermont Homeland Security website, there's phenomenal information on there about what you should be doing with your business or with your place of employment. The Bennington Police, we really don't have time to draft a plan for everybody, so I can tell you that's where you need to start. You need to go to the Homeland Security website and you need to look at everything that they offer, and they will tell you about making those magical buckets that I've already touched on that are very important to your comfort and care. They will talk about first aid and trauma supplies and things, everything that we've gotten over here tonight and more, and you can do that at your leisure. You don't have to sit here anymore on these hard metal chairs and listen to Paul Doucette and his group, but because we want to make sure that our community is prepared in the event of a critical incident. And I will take one more question, Bonnie, because you've been very patient and you called me 400 times before this thing started.
All right. This is great for businesses that all employees work in one place. Okay? We don't. My business, we have nurses that go to homes, we have nurses that go to employers and all that. What would you recommend? What would we tell them that would be the most important thing for them?
Situational awareness.
Right. Situational awareness is key, making sure that those people that are going out into the field all have a cell phone in case they need to call for help, and they should be carrying in their purse or in their bag something like this. We call this an IFAC, and this here, although I don't want to take it all out because boy, the first time I took it out, it took me a half hour to get it all back in there.
And that's mine.
And this is Cam. And so this is everything compacted, and this right here is about $120. I know it's expensive, but people that are in the field that are by themselves should have something like this. All of my officers have these, and and it's important that they have the equipment that they need to self-aid. in the event that something goes wrong, but situational awareness is key. If they are not comfortable going into someone's home, and we've seen it, we've gone with nurses in DCF and other organizations into people's homes, and sometimes it's pretty scary, right? Sometimes we send more than one officer, and the bottom line is that situational awareness is key. If they're not comfortable, then they back out.
And I'm just going to add on that. You should have something started with them, some type of check-in, check-out. So if you know they're going to a home, they should sign out somewhere with however they would do it, and then when they're done, they sign back out and say that I'm done with that patient, or that house, I'm on to my next one.
Yeah.
And keep in constant communication.
Okay?
Everyone, I just want to thank you so much for coming tonight, and I really appreciate our first responders in our community. We owe them a round of applause.
I want to share with you, Dee put this together. She called us up, she came to visit. We kept her in my office for a while. And
He even brought out a big gun.
I did too, because I wanted to make sure that she knew what she was asking us to do. And the bottom line is we do care about our community, everyone in our community, and we want the community to be safe. You've all read about our school resource officer plan, and if you're a taxpayer in Bennington, next time it comes time to vote, support that. And because we want to keep our kids safe, we want to keep our families safe, we want to keep all of you safe, and thanks for coming out.